on First at 9 this Monday, the 17th of February 2025. Sri Lanka's 79th budget to Parliament. President Anura Dissanayake presents his maiden budget, aiming to transform the Sri Lankan economy and prepare for debt repayment in 3 years.
2025 වර්ෂය සඳහා 5% පමණ ආර්ථික වර්ධනයක් අපි අපේක්ෂා කරනවා. සැලකීතු මට්ටමකින් ණය සහනයක් ලැබී ඇති අතර මේ ණය සේවා කරණයට අදාළ පිරිවැය සැලකීතු ලෙස අඩු කරනවා. අනාගතයේදී ණය ආපසු ගෙවීම ක්‍රමවත්ව නැවත ආරම්භ කිරීමට මෙම රාජ්‍ය මූල්‍ය අවකාශය ප්‍රයෝජනට ගැනීමට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වෙනවා.
Deficit bridge. Sri Lanka targets 6.7% budget deficit and tax revenue increase to 15% of GDP this year. No difference. Opposition claims budget 2025 does not reflect any ideological change from past economic policies.
ගිය පාර ආයවැයි මේ පාර ආයවැයි අතරේ කිසිම වෙනසක් නැහැ.
අපිට පේන්නේ IMF එක පනවපු සීමාවන් තුල නිර්මාණය කරපු ආයවැය.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා හදපු ආයවැයක්.
Reform agenda. Government proposes 11 new legislation and legal reforms in keeping with Sri Lanka's commitments to the International Monetary Fund. Parliamentary approval. Local authorities elections special provisions bill passed into legislation.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කට්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe වැස්සත් මට්ටුවෙන් ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. Now taking you to your top story tonight, Sri Lanka's 79th annual budget was presented for the year 2025 in Parliament today by President Anura Dissanayake in his capacity as the Minister of Finance. Budget 2025 is the National People's Power's first budget proposal since coming into power last year. The budget estimates total expenditure for the year 2025 at 7.19 trillion rupees and total revenue and grants at 4.99 trillion rupees. Accordingly, the budget deficit for the year is estimated at 2.2 trillion rupees, which is 6.7% of GDP, a marginal decrease from last year's 6.8%. Addressing the House, President Dissanayake asserted that the budget was compiled with stability in mind to ensure that Sri Lanka is ready to resume debt servicing by 2028.
The 79th budget of Sri Lanka, themed The First Step Towards a Wealthy Nation, was presented to the Parliament this morning by President Anura Dissanayake. This is the National People's Power's first budget after coming into power last year. The budget estimates total expenditure for the period from the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2025 at 7.19 trillion rupees, while the total revenue is estimated at 4.99 trillion rupees. Accordingly, the budget deficit for the year is estimated at 2.2 trillion rupees, which is 6.7% of GDP. Meanwhile, the total gross borrowing requirement to be recorded in government accounts will be 4 trillion rupees.
ශ්‍රී ලංකාව 2022 වසරේදී නිදහසින් පසුව ගැඹුරුතම හා සංකීර්ණතම සමාජ ආර්ථික දේශපාලනික අර්බුදයට මුහුණ දුන්නා.
In 2022, Sri Lanka experienced its deepest and most complex socio-economic and political crisis since independence. The underlying causes of the crisis are historical and structural. Corrupt governance, failed economic policies and irresponsible public financial management were its root causes. The crisis also triggered a political shift in the country. Unbearable economic economic hardships led to social uprisings against corrupt rulers. People's power forced them to step down from government. Subsequently, people took a progressive decision to form a new government with a strong mandate. This budget is historic as it lays the foundation for fulfilling the aspirations of the people for the economic transformation of the country by driving the economy towards sustainable growth and development. Despite negative propaganda against us, we were able to successfully stabilize the economy and build strong relationships with international partners and create confidence among investors. The financial sector gradually stabilized with the benchmark annual treasury bill rate coming down to 8.8%. Foreign currency reserves were at $6.1 billion by end December 2024, even after the debt restructuring related payments of $570 million in December. The Sri Lankan rupee strengthened to approximately 300 against the US dollar. We expect an economic growth of around 5% in 2025. We are of the view that achieving economic sovereignty is necessary in order to design our economic agenda. When we came into power, the debt restructuring process was ongoing, which we did not want to obstruct given the potential to destabilize the economy if such a drastic change took place. This process has provided substantial debt relief, significantly reducing debt servicing costs. It is imperative that the country leverage this fiscal space to strengthen external and fiscal buffers and enhance non-debt generating inflows such as export income and foreign investment and ensure long-term financial stability to facilitate the smooth resumption of debt repayments in the future. We must resume debt repayments in 2028. Therefore, we must use this 3-year window to transform our country into a strong economy capable of repaying debt. However, growth for the sake of growth has little value to society unless it is a means to uplifting the lives of all members of society. The people's struggles and last year's election saw people asserting their political rights. Now what is necessary is for economic rights to be similarly asserted. This is the philosophy of this budget. We have achieved stability to a certain extent. Therefore, this budget has been prepared with a focused sense of fiscal discipline, economic vision and guidance. The Public Financial Management Act, as a key fiscal rule, limits primary expenditure to 13% of GDP, and this year's budget is prepared in accordance with this requirement. In this year's budget, we have been able to allocate funds for many of our key priorities, although it may not be to the fullest extent that is desired. We have allocated funds for the Senior Citizens Interest Subsidy from July 2025. We have allocated 4% of GDP for capital expenditure. This year's budget also features the highest allocation for health and education in Sri Lankan history. We expect economic growth of over 5% of real GDP growth over the medium term. We expect to maintain a low and stable inflation. We also expect a stable external current account balance. Accordingly, the rupee exchange rate will no longer experience spells of substantial volatility. We expect exports of goods and services to reach an all-time high of close to $19 billion in 2025. A primary budget surplus of 2.3% of GDP will ensure Sri Lanka is well placed to meet the gradual increase in debt service payments from 2028 onwards. Poverty levels are on the rise following the economic crisis. We hope to see a reversal of this trend by 2025, followed by a persistent decline in poverty as the proposals in this budget take the first step towards a comprehensive effort to empower the poorest and most vulnerable members of society. With sound financial management, responsible debt management, human capital investment, a robust social safety net, economic diversification, promotion of exports, improvement of investment climate, modernization of agriculture, green economy policies, innovation, digitalization, entrepreneurship and startup ecosystems, public-private partnerships, strengthening of anti-corruption measures, improvement of governance and promotion of transparency and sustainable growth strategies, we expect to better use the post-crisis opportunities to create a transformative change in the Sri Lankan economy to achieve long-term economic stability and prosperity.
පරිවර්තනීය වෙනසක් ඇති කිරීම සඳහා පශ්චාත් අර්බුද අවස්ථා වඩාත් හොඳින් යොදා ගැනීමට අපි අපේක්ෂා කරනවා.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් බලා අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Don't waste time. Start your degree with pending A-level results this February with our partner universities. Call ACBT on 0117 699 499.
Budget 2025 has allocated 20 billion rupees for the national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines to repay the principal and interest on its loan. Meanwhile, proposals have also been put forward to implement a national export development plan aimed at boosting Sri Lanka's exports of goods and services. Additionally, several other proposals have been introduced to develop the northern and eastern provinces, along with initiatives to enhance the livelihoods of the public.
Government proposes to implement a national export development plan for the period from 2025 to 2029 aimed at boosting Sri Lanka's exports of goods and services. A new tariff policy and a new customs law will be introduced. Efforts will also expand double taxation avoidance agreements with priority given to trade partners with high potential. The government plans to revise the Economic Transformation Act to accommodate new developments and lease underutilized state-owned land for productive purposes. An investment protection bill is to be introduced and 750 million rupees will be allocated through 2025 for the National Quality Infrastructure System to provide the fundamental steps towards fulfilling Sri Lanka's potential as a hub for trade, logistics, financial services and digital economy. Expressions of interest will soon be initiated for the completion of East and West container terminals along with the development of Colombo West Terminal 2 and Colombo North Port projects. It is proposed to allocate 500 million rupees for initial works related to the Kerawalapitia Customs Yard and Blue Mendel Logistics Park. Another 500 million rupees will support the development of digital systems for ports, including the National Single Window Truck Appointment System and e-cargo tracking. The government will focus on the introduction of a Sri Lanka unique digital identification system for all citizens, strengthen related cybersecurity and privacy legislation, and promote digital payments infrastructure. With the aim of supporting the transition from cash to digital payments, 3 billion rupees has been allocated for the digital economic development. Critical infrastructure is to be prioritized for development of tourism between 2025 and 2026, supported by an integrated marketing campaign which will receive 500 million rupees. All luxury vehicles that incur high running and maintenance costs are to be auctioned. To reduce financial risks from state-owned enterprises, government plans to establish a holding company that will oversee select state-owned enterprises. 7.5 billion rupees will also be allocated to provide nutritious food, especially for pregnant women. An additional 5 billion will be earmarked for the Triposha program and 120 million to support programs for the prevention of violence against women and children, while 720 million rupees will maintain a national network for women's welfare programs. The 2025 health budget has been increased to 604 billion, with 185 billion allocated for the procurement of pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. Government has allocated 10 billion rupees to upgrade schools' infrastructure. Additionally, 135 billion rupees is set aside to improve the quality of university education. Monthly Grade 5 scholarship benefits will increase from 750 rupees to 1,500 rupees, with 1,000 million rupees allocated for the initiative. Students in sports schools will see their monthly nutritious food allowance doubled from 5,000 to 10,000 rupees. Vocational education students will receive an increased stipend from 4,000 rupees to 5,000 rupees per month, with an additional 200 million rupees allocated. The Mahapala scholarship will rise from 5,000 rupees to 7,500 rupees and bursaries will be increased from 4,000 rupees to 6,500 rupees, supported by a 4,600 million rupee budget allocation. A new program will offer top-performing A-level students scholarships to pursue undergraduate degrees at high-ranking universities abroad, with 200 million rupees allocated for the initiative. A specialized sports school is proposed to be established in 5 provinces, namely Western, Northern, Central, Uva and North Central, with an allocation of 500 million rupees. Another 100 million rupees will be allocated to provide computers and other essential facilities for the Jaffna Library, and an additional 200 million rupees will be earmarked for the development of regional libraries. In the energy sector, the government plans to focus on developing the Trincomalee oil tank complex with international partners to access global markets. It is expected to develop 61 oil tanks as joint ventures with internationally recognized companies, in addition to the oil tanks owned by Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka Indian Oil Company in the Trincomalee oil tank complex, which has 99 tanks of 10,000 metric ton capacity. 250 million rupees is also proposed to be allocated for the Department of Railways to cater to the growing commuter demands. To address debt resettlement for national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines, 20 billion rupees is proposed to be allocated. It is proposed to sign an agreement with commercial banks and set aside 10 billion rupees for loan capital repayment in 2025 and 10 billion rupees for interest repayments. The airline would be fully responsible for ensuring operating profitability once these legacy debt service costs are settled by the government. To enhance road infrastructure, 1 billion rupees is to be allocated to rehabilitate rural bridges in addition to the already allocated 1 billion rupees for the development of the rural bridges island-wide. The fertilizer subsidy will be continued for paddy farmers with 35 billion allocated for the year 2025. 2,500 million rupees has been allocated for improvements to dairy farming between 2025 and 2026. A total of 78 billion is allocated for the development of irrigation systems, including new water resource projects. An additional 2 billion rupees will be used to rehabilitate downstream irrigation schemes. Highlighting that the northern province has been isolated from mainstream development despite its potential to contribute significantly to the national economy, 5 billion rupees has been allocated to rehabilitate and improve rural roads and bridges in the region. A comprehensive development program will be implemented in the eastern province with Indian multi-sectoral grant assistance. This will focus on improving infrastructure and livelihoods in education, health, agriculture, fisheries, tourism and community empowerment. The government has also allocated 7.58 billion rupees for the development of the Malayalam community. Also, 500 million has been allocated to establish a chemical product manufacturing industrial estate in Paranthan in the northern province and industrial parks in Kankasanture, Mankulam, Iranavilla, Galle and Trincomalee. Meanwhile, 5 billion rupees has been allocated for a cultural festival to improve inter-ethnic, inter-religious and communal ties with additional donor contributions. In order to address the human-elephant conflict, 640 million rupees has been allocated for electric fencing, infrastructure improvements and compensation for victims. To address challenges in the north and east, 1.5 billion rupees is allocated to support resettlement, speed up the housing program and provide essential relief to homeless families in the region. Prioritizing the completion of key water supply projects, 20 billion rupees will be allocated as equity contribution for projects in Gampaha, Attanagalla, Minuangoda, Alutgama, Matugama, Agalavatta, Polgahawela, Alawwa, Potuhara and Tambuttegama. An additional 2 billion rupees is allocated for community water supply schemes. A strategic recruitment plan will be implemented to hire 30,000 individuals for essential public service roles and 10 billion rupees has been allocated for the initiative. Minimum monthly basic salaries for public sector employees will be increased by 15,750. It is proposed to increase salaries from 24,250 to 40,000 rupees at minimum. The increase will also apply to judicial services, public corporations, statutory boards, university staff and the Triforces. In addition, the annual salary increment will be raised by 80% from 250 at present to 450 rupees. The total estimated cost of this salary increase is 325 billion rupees with 110 billion allocated for year 2025. Of the total net salary increase, 5,000 rupees and 30% of the balance amount will be paid starting from April 2025 and the remaining 70% paid in equal portions beginning January 2026 and January 2027. Private sector employees associations have agreed to increase minimum monthly wages for private sector employees from 21,000 rupees to 27,000 rupees in April 2025 and 30,000 rupees by 2026. To improve the living standards of plantations, the government will increase their daily wages to 1,700 rupees. To address pension anomalies, the pensions of all retirees before 1st January 2020 will be revised in 3 phases in line with 2020 salary scales. The first phase will revise pensions for those who retired before 1st January 2018 with 10 billion allocated. The payments will be made from July 2025.
Now, after the presentation of this year's inaugural budget, a leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, claims that the budget has been formulated within the constraints of the International Monetary Fund, effectively handing over the country to the global lender. SJB Member of Parliament Dr. Harsha De Silva meanwhile claimed that the same neoliberal economic reforms that the parties in government previously opposed have been introduced. Now let's take a look at views expressed by parliamentarians following the President's inaugural budget.
හරියට රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමාගේ තුන්වැනි ආයවැය අනුර කුමාර දිසානායක මැතිතුමා හැවිල්ලා ඉදිරිපත් කෙරුවා හා සමානයි. ඔවුන් දැන් විශ්වාස කරනවා නම් එහෙනම් අවුරුදු 74 තිබුණු මොඩලය හරි. ඒකම යන්න ඕනේ කියලා එනම් මේ ආයවැය හොඳයි.
මේක හොඳයි කියලා දැන් කියනවා නම් මොන කරුමයක්ද අපිට උනේ අවුරුදු 40ක් තිස්සේ. දැන් මේවා හොඳ නැහැ. අපරාධනේ අපේ අවුරුදු 40ක්. ගිය පාර ආයවැයයි මේ පාර ආයවැය අතරේ කිසිම වෙනසක් නැහැ. අයිඩියොලොජි එක වෙනස් නම් මේ වෙනස් දෙයක් කියන්න එපා. මම වැරදි කියන්නේ හොඳේ.
හැබැයි රට අනුරට කියන
When we look at President Anura Dissanayaka's manifesto, they promised to bake a bigger cake. As we can see, the country has been handed over to the International Monetary Fund, not the President. This is a budget created within the parameters of the International Monetary Fund.
සීමාවන් තුල නිර්මාණය කරපු අයවැය.
ජනතාව දීපු ජනවරමට ඒ වගේම අපේක්ෂාවලට සියලු දේවල් ඇතුළත් කරපු අයවැයක්. ඒ නිසා මේ අයවැය පිළිබඳව රටේ ජනතාව ඉතිහාසයේ කවදාටත් වඩා සතුටු වෙන අයවැයක් වෙනවා මේක. දැන් ඉතින් කියන්න දෙයක් නැති නිසා IMF හරි මොනවා හරි කියයි.
අපේ රට ඉදිරියට යනවා අපිට දකින්නට ඕන.
We want to see that our country is moving forward. For that, I will express my support for the government and my criticism in the near future after I conduct a proper study. I didn't see a budget that aligns with their political manifesto.
ඉදිරිපත් කරපු ප්‍රතිපත්ති ප්‍රකාශය හා බැඳුණු අයවැයක් නෙමෙයි දැක්කේ. ඒක නිසා
කවුරුත් පිළිගන්න තියෙන මේ විවෘත ආර්ථිකය අද
Our President presented his inaugural budget today. We wish him good luck. We are also happy that the NPP government has finally accepted the open market economy, which was first accepted by the United National Party and the Samik Jana Sandhanaya. However, we are disappointed of the situation of the estate community. The government has not given proper attention to this community.
ඒ ජනතාවගේ දිනුව සම්බන්ධව එතුමාලා පිට අද යොමු කරලා නැහැ.
හොඳයි රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා හදපු අයවැයක්.
I felt that President Anura Dissanayaka presented a budget created by former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. There are significant similarities between their policies. We hope that they increase salaries every 6 months because that's what the people hoped for. Now they have made it to be tripled every 3 years. I believe that is a good thing. We hope good things will happen.
Fast track your career from O levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Malibu chocolate cream, inguru and lemon puff. Less sugar, same great taste. From Malibu.
Welcome back. Now, President Anura Dissanayaka in his budget speech also outlined a number of new legislation and legal reforms which are part of Sri Lanka's commitment to the International Monetary Fund in return for the $3 billion extended fund facility. The proposed reforms encompass sectors such as revenue collection, investment, state-owned enterprises and public assets management.
Budget 2025 includes proposals for 11 new laws and legal reforms to implement the new government's policies, which are part of Sri Lanka's commitments in return for the $3 billion bailout package from the International Monetary Fund. The first is a new act on the exchange of information between state institutions. The proposed act aims to enhance the efficiency of public services and ensure the proper collection of state revenues, especially to facilitate the seamless exchange of information among relevant state institutions such as the Inland Revenue and Customs departments. The second proposal is for an Investment Protection Act, which is an overarching legislation to safeguard the rights of investors and provide a conducive environment for foreign investment. Then comes the State Business Enterprises Management Act, which aims to ensure the effective management of state-owned enterprises, thereby rendering them free from political influence and enabling them to operate as commercially driven institutions that provide high-quality goods and services to the public. This law is further expected to enable SOEs to be managed by industry experts, ensuring the boards of directors are appointed independently. Next is the new Public-Private Partnership Investment Management Act, which intends to encourage foreign and domestic private investments in collaboration with the public sector. This is expected to be achieved by enhancing investor confidence through strengthening security for investments and creating a more reliable and expansive investment environment while mitigating any fiscal risks that arise from such partnerships. In the meantime, the proposed Statistics Act aims to replace the long-standing legislation governing population statistics and the census in Sri Lanka, incorporating updated methodologies and concepts. This is expected to create a new environment for conducting an efficient population census through new technological methods, enhance the utilization of census data collected in governance, improve data sharing with private institutions, and establish a comprehensive data and information repository. The proposed Valuation Act, meanwhile, is expected to introduce new legislation for the management of the Government Valuation Department. Improving the efficiency of the department is expected to enable timely valuation of state assets, thereby increasing revenue for local government institutions while also making valuation services more accessible to the public. In the meantime, the new Public Asset Management Act intends to introduce new legislation for non-financial asset management to ensure the effective utilization, proper maintenance, and optimal value extraction for those properties. Accordingly, this new legislation envisages enactment of provisions to provide the required legal basis for the non-financial assets management of public institutions, while ensuring institutional compliance for recording and reporting the information of these assets, and thus enabling protection and proper management of public properties. Similarly, the proposed public procurement law intends to ensure the efficient use of public funds by promoting optimal performance, value for money, competitiveness, and transparency, while also preventing corruption and strengthening accountability. Meanwhile, government plans to introduce a new law named Microfinance and Credit Regulatory Authority Act to address the shortcomings of the existing Microfinance Act No. 6 of 2006. Government claims that the current Microfinance Act does not provide comprehensive regulation and supervision of the microfinance industry and lacks adequate focus on consumer protection and the regulation of market conduct by microfinance institutions. Similarly, government has also proposed strengthening Sri Lanka's anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism framework in line with international standards. The Convention on the Suspension of Terrorist Financing Act No. 25 of 2005, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act No. 5 of 2006, and the Financial Reporting Act No. 6 of 2006 are the primary legislations that support and strengthen Sri Lanka's AML-CFT framework, and amendments to these legislations have been identified as essential to further enhance the country's AML-CFT regime. Finally, government plans to amend the Paddy Marketing Act No. 14 of 1971 to address contemporary challenges in the paddy and rice market. The proposed amendment is expected to establish a regulatory mechanism for paddy and rice stockpiling while strengthening existing licensing provisions and other related regulations. Following the President's budget speech, the traditional tea reception was held at the Parliament cafeteria with the participation of both government and opposition ministers, foreign diplomats, ministry secretaries, and other invitees. The second reading debate of the budget will begin tomorrow and will continue for 7 days until the 25th of February. Subsequently, the vote on second reading will be held at 6 p.m. on the 25th. Afterwards, the third reading of the budget or the committee stage debate will begin on the 27th of February and will continue for 19 days until the 21st of March. Finally, the vote on the third reading of the appropriation bill will be held at 6 p.m. on March 21st.
Government meanwhile proposes new regulations to be introduced regarding value-added tax registration and the taxation of services provided through digital platforms. Also, senior citizens with an assessable income below 1.8 million rupees will be exempt from withholding tax on bank interest.
The government proposes to remove the requirement for filing the statement of estimated tax starting from the year of assessment 2025-2026. Additionally, new provisions are proposed to determine tax installment amounts for individuals based on tax payable in the preceding year. Non-resident individuals will be exempt from taxes on payments related to aircraft, software licenses or associated services received from Sri Lanka Air Force. Senior citizens with an assessable income below 1.8 million rupees will be exempt from withholding tax on bank interest, provided the income is declared. Non-senior citizens meeting the same income threshold will be eligible for a tax refund under the existing senior citizen scheme. The current tax treatment for asset transfers to an individual's associate or a charitable institution will be expanded to include transfers to the Sri Lankan government or universities under the Universities Act. The capital gains tax rate for individuals and partnerships is proposed to be increased to 15%, while for other entities it will rise to 30%, aligning with corporate tax rates. Golden Paradise resident visa holders will be considered non-residents. Individuals employed on Sri Lankan flagged vessels will be regarded as residents during their employment period. However, non-Sri Lankan individuals working on such vessels will not be taxed as residents on non-Sri Lankan sourced income, except for income earned from vessel employment. It is also proposed to exempt VAT on packing materials imported for pharmaceuticals or Ayurvedic medicines when such materials are not manufactured in Sri Lanka. Additionally, new regulations will be introduced regarding VAT registration, collection, filing and the taxation of services provided through digital platforms. The SVAT system is proposed to be replaced with a risk-based refund system, with a pilot project facilitating refunds through the RAMIS system. Meanwhile, the budget proposes VAT exemptions for businesses approved as businesses of strategic importance under the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act effective January 1, 2024. VAT arrears related to tsunami reconstruction projects will be written off. Input tax deductions on capital goods, such as machinery and equipment imported for projects with deferred VAT at import, will be disallowed. VAT-registered businesses will be required to use point-of-sale machines, which will be implemented accordingly. The definition of transportation of goods and passengers will be expanded to include services related to international transportation by container terminal operators. Tax exemptions for certain articles will be clarified to include wholesale or retail sales of those items. Exemptions will also apply to machinery or equipment used for electricity generation, provided the institution has an agreement with the Ceylon Electricity Board before the 18th of February 2025. Stamp duty on lease or hire agreements is proposed to increase from 10 rupees to 20 rupees per 1,000 rupees, or part thereof effective 1st of March 2025. The budget also proposes to increase the gross collection levy to 18%. And raise the casino entrance levy from $50 to $100.
Welcome back. Now, following the presentation of the budget, the Local Authorities Elections Special Provisions Bill was passed with a special majority in Parliament today without amendments. Meanwhile, the legislature heated up with MPs trading verbal blows over several issues concerning the local government elections.
The bill will be presented to the Parliament with the intention of conducting the local government elections, which were arbitrarily postponed by the previous administration in violation of the fundamental rights of the people. To that end, we believe that those elected through the local government elections will perform their best to ensure the well-being of the public. There were issues concerning the list of nominations for the elections, especially for the opposition parties. After considering these concerns, we request to call for fresh nominations for the local government elections.
අලුතෙන් නාම යෝජනා ඉදිරිපත් කිරීම සඳහා අවස්ථාව ලබා දෙන්න කියන එක
මැතිවරණය පවත්වන්න අපි අපේ සහයෝගය දෙනවා. මේකේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දැන් මේ මැතිවරණය සඳහා
We will support the government to hold the elections. However, nearly 80,000 candidates have submitted nominations to contest the polls. The deposits made by those candidates are currently with the Treasury. We request the government to return those deposits to the candidates before calling new nominations. The Election Commission is authorized to hold elections in the country and announce the dates for the polls. There is a 3-month period in which to make this announcement. However, the cabinet spokesperson said that the elections will be conducted in April this year. How can the cabinet spokesperson determine the dates for an election? Does the government intervene in the decision-making process of the Election Commission? Is this government trying to undermine the autonomy of the Election Commission? The government nor its ministers, not even the cabinet spokesperson, can coerce the Election Commission into conducting the elections. The debate on the budget will go on until the 21st of March. How can we hold an election amidst the ongoing debate? We need a decision that is fair to everyone. All leaders of the opposition parties requested that the elections be conducted on a suitable date say that is fair to everyone. The ordinary level examination is also around the corner. It should be conducted without exerting any pressure on the children. However, loudspeakers are often used for election campaigning. The government and the Election Commission should be considerate of this. What is more, the Sinhala and Tamil New Year is also approaching. There are several considerable issues concerning this topic. However, the government is attempting to coerce the Election Commission into acting in their interest. We request the Election Commission to take an impartial decision on this issue.
Today, Sri Lanka has to atone for the past of Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Rajpaksha family and the other leaders. The budget debate will come to an end by the 21st of March. The local government polls will most likely be held at the end of April. However, we will not run out of time for election campaigning. It is true that the budget debate is proceeding until the 21st of March. However, the candidates will be given a period of 5 weeks prior to the elections to hold their constituency meetings. In my opinion, this time would be sufficient for campaigning. Recently, the Election Commission released the election expenditure reports of political parties for the presidential election. Which party or presidential candidate incurred the most expenses? It is the defeated leader of the opposition who spent nearly 900 million rupees on election expenses. How did he obtain that much money? We are not here to enrich ourselves. 187 votes cast in favour of the second reading debate of the Local Authorities Election Special Provisions Bill. No votes were cast in opposition of the bill and there were no abstentions either. Accordingly, the second reading debate of the Local Authorities Election Special Provisions Bill was passed in Parliament with a majority vote.
Following the debate, the vote on the second reading debate of the Local Authorities Elections Special Provisions Bill was conducted. Subsequently, a division was called for the third reading of the bill. During the vote on the third reading, 158 votes were cast in favour and the bill was passed with a special majority without amendments.
And that's all from First at 9 tonight. For the latest developments around the clock, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you and have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.